The Dynamic Learning Maps Alternate Assessment System is a new assessment designed to more validly measure what students with significant cognitive disabilities know and can do. This presentation will provide information about emergent writing and how this applies to students with significant cognitive disabilities. In this module, you will learn what emergent writing is, review some ideas for emergent writing activities, and discuss strategies to support emergent writers. What exactly is emergent writing? Emergent writing includes the marks, scribbles, lines, and randomly selected letters of beginning writers. Although we often associate this type of writing with younger children, students of any age can be emergent writers. During the emergent writing stage, students are experimenting with writing. As they experiment, students are figuring out how to use a pencil, how to construct understandings, how to represent their ideas, and that writing is communication. The DLM essential elements require students to produce writing for a range of purposes and audiences. To build a foundation for college and career readiness, students need to learn to use writing as a way of offering and supporting opinions, to demonstrate understanding of the subjects they are studying, and to convey real and imagined experiences, events, and topics. As highlighted in the DLM English Language Arts Claim 2, students are expected to produce writing for a range of purposes and audiences. DLM Claim 2 provides the ultimate goal for our students as writers. But how do you get started? Emergent writers can begin working on the DLM essential elements long before they can write words. It is important to remember that emergent writers have many things to figure out as they begin to experiment with writing. So be patient and provide lots of meaningful opportunities to engage in writing. Writing development emerges over time. The first thing to consider is that in order to write, you have to have some sort of writing tool. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, this can be quite a challenge. Due to motor and/or sensory challenges, many students with significant cognitive disabilities need something other than a conventional pen, pencil, or computer keyboard to produce writing. As described in the module on alternate pencils, every student must have access to all 26 letters of the alphabet. It may be access provided through motor skills that make it possible to write letters with a conventional pen or pencil, pointing skills that allow access to a standard keyboard, switch access that provides access to letters through scanning, or some other form. In this picture, the boy is using two switches to access letters on his communication device. He uses a switch near his right elbow to highlight letters one at a time, and then a switch near his knee to select a desired letter when it is highlighted. Recall that alternate pencils do not always require technology. These are three options described in the module on alternate pencils. They require a partner to work with the student to write letters as the student selects them by pointing, accessing a switch to communicate "write that one," or looking at the desired letter. If you have students who cannot use a conventional pen, pencil, or computer keyboard, be certain to complete the DLM Professional Development module on alternate pencils. Whether your students use a conventional pencil or an alternate pencil, it's important to remember that they do not need to know how to use their pencil to get started. Students also do not need to know the letters of the alphabet to start using their pencils. They figure these things out by engaging in the act of writing, through our feedback about their efforts, and as a result of our overall literacy instruction. The form of emergent writers becomes more conventional over time when we provide opportunities for them to engage in activities and provide feedback and instruction that emphasizes the meaningful functions of their writing. One way to support emergent writers is to provide interesting topics for them to write about. Topics could include a text that the student has read or heard, a personal experience, or something you know the student is interested in. It is often difficult for beginning writers to think of topics, and even when students have a topic in mind, they may not have the communication skills to tell us what it is. Certainly, emergent writers lack the skills required to write about the topic without some support. Helping students learn to select topics allows educators to know what a student is writing about, which in turn supports educators in providing informative feedback as students experiment and emerge in their understandings of print. Pause for Activity 1. There are many ways to help students begin to think about topics for writing. You can provide students with symbols or drawings. You can provide access to photos of school-related topics and experiences. This teacher took photos representing people, places, and events that were familiar to her students. Next, she organized the photos in categories and bound them with metal rings so that she could easily add or remove photos. During writing time, students could first choose one of the categories and then a specific picture from that category to write about. You might also use remnants from personal experiences, such as tickets from a trip to the movies, a straw from a stop at a fast food restaurant, the yarn scraps from a project in art class, or a favorite instrument in music. This is an example of one student's personal remnant book. The student's mother purchased an inexpensive plastic photo holder, and whenever her son did something she thought he might want to write about, the mother enclosed a remnant from the experience and a small sticky note explaining the meaning of the remnant to the classroom staff. During writing, the student had the opportunity to review these remnants of personal events and choose what he wanted to write about. The remnants pictured here include a lock of hair and a NASCAR card from a haircut at Sport Clips, and 2 ticket stubs from a trip to the movies with friends. You can also create lists of familiar subjects, places, or experiences. Of course, most students who are emergent writers would not be able to read the items on this list, but they may be able to make a choice if the teacher read each of the options one at a time. This list includes things the class is learning about, places and events they have been to, and topics that could apply to anyone at any time, such as writing about what I did yesterday. If students have the communication skills, they can select a topic by simply saying what they want to write about. They may also make a selection through direct means such as touching, pointing to, or looking at their choice. If a student is unable to do any of these things, you may also use partner-assisted scanning to offer each of the choices. In partner-assisted scanning, the partner presents each choice, and the student indicates his or her selection by vocalizing, accessing a switch, nodding, blinking, or otherwise communicating, "That's the one I want." The important thing to remember is that the choices of topics should vary, be as numerous as possible, and always be interesting and meaningful to the student. As mentioned earlier in this DLM module, claim number 2 states that students can produce writing for a range of purposes and audiences. Not only is this an important skill in terms of college and career readiness, it also ensures that writing instruction remains more varied and interesting. There is a range of writing purposes defined by the DLM essential elements. In addition to these, students may write to express their thoughts and feelings in a personal journal, or they could communicate with others by writing emails, cards, notes, or letters. Other writing purposes include producing captions for pictures or textuals, or creating signs or posters. Students may also write their own book or poem based on a real or imagined experience, or write to express an opinion or propose an argument. The DLM essential elements will provide guidance in terms of grade level expectations, but across the grades, the focus remains on writing for a range of purposes and audiences. Because emergent writers are not yet producing conventional text, their efforts are often dismissed as meaningless. However, tracking their progress over time clearly shows how early efforts shape into conventional writing when it emerges. Let's look at the emergent writing of two different students to see what this progress looks like over time. This writing sample was produced by Isaac in April of 2013. During writing time, students in this class never copied or traced text, as is appropriate if the goal is to teach students to write for a variety of purposes and audiences. Instead, their teachers let them choose a topic represented by a picture or object, and students were allowed to use their emergent writing to represent their ideas. Initially, it was difficult to get Isaac to write. He was extremely anxious and preferred to throw pencils rather than use them to write. He did not seem interested in any of the pictured topic choices provided, so his teachers kept trying to come up with different topics. After a while, they noticed that Isaac liked to imitate noises made by electronics, and this clued them in to Isaac's interest in appliances. If you look closely at this early writing sample about a vacuum cleaner, you will see some basic scribble, many repetitions of an approximation of the letter A, and some potential repetitions of the letter I. This picture offers a close-up view of the letters A and I from the previous sample. The fact that these letters appear in Isaac's name may explain why he knows them and shows a preference for writing them. While we do not know that Isaac was trying to write his name, we can show him how to use those letters to write Isaac. The teacher let Isaac know that she saw the letters A and I, and then said, "Look, Isaac, I can use those letters to write your name." Then she modeled writing it. The teacher's goal was not to guess what Isaac was trying to write, but to show him how some of the letters he wrote could be used to write words that he knows. Isaac wrote this 2 weeks later, in early May of 2013. Again, he produced some basic scribble as well as some letters and letter-like shapes. Notice that he branched out to include more alphabet letters than he had written previously. This writing sample comes from mid-May. Isaac wrote about a book called Wishy-Washy Washerwoman. Isaac's teachers wrote the legible book title and date. Isaac's writing continues to look like scribble, but we can also see that he seems to be gaining an appreciation for text orientation, moving from left to right and top to bottom, rather than writing all over the page. Here, Isaac is writing about a single-cup coffee maker. He produced some scribble, several repetitions of the letter A, and what looks like drawing. What is different about this writing sample is that Isaac told his teachers that he wrote coffee taking a shower, which was his impression of the stream of liquid pouring into the coffee cup. Although Isaac's writing is not conveying that message with conventional text, he used his language to describe the picture rather than simply labeling it. His language is becoming more complex. Furthermore, he demonstrated his understanding that print carries meaning and is intended to convey information. At the beginning of the next school year, Isaac's teachers gave him the option of using a keyboard as his pencil. In this writing sample, Isaac used invented spelling to write words like mixer, ice cream, mixes, and make. The words he typed out are printed in larger font on the right side of the screen so they are easier to see. Isaac referred to the classroom word wall to spell the word pink, which is the only word that is spelled conventionally. Although most words are not spelled correctly, his invented spelling lets us know that Isaac is hearing the sounds within words and making good attempts to represent those sounds in his spelling. Perhaps because he was new to using a keyboard, this writing sample has only one word per line and looks like a list. Take a look at this final writing sample about a snowblower. Isaac composed the typed message near the bottom of the page and hand-wrote his name. As he read his writing to his teachers, they transcribed it so they would have a record. Isaac's typing is reproduced below the picture in larger font so you can read it. Note that Isaac used invented spelling when he wrote. He began many of his words with the correct initial letter and sound, which in this case is S. There is also a B at the beginning of the last word, which he said was black. Isaac is now writing multiple words on a line rather than creating a list. He described what a snowblower does and the color rather than just providing a label. It's also interesting to consider the role that technology plays here. You can see from the way Isaac writes his name that he continues to struggle to control a pencil. Using a keyboard, he is able to produce legible letters. His teachers can read the letters well enough to see that he is beginning to represent some sounds and words with appropriate letters, especially at the beginning of words. If Isaac had copied correctly spelled words rather than engaging in his own writing, he may have memorized how to spell a few words, but he would have missed the opportunity to pay attention to the sounds in words and figure out which letters represent those sounds. His emergent writing experiences have helped him develop a skill that he can apply to spell unfamiliar words in the future. Given multiple opportunities to write about topics of interest and an appropriate pencil, Isaac is figuring out many things about the complex act of writing. He has improved his written form, his expressive language, and his use of letters to represent the sounds within words. This is what emergent writing progress looks like with a pencil or a keyboard. Pause for Activity 2. Let's take a look at Jack's writing progress over the course of 18 months. Jack uses the Print alphabet flip chart and partner-assisted scanning to write. Because Jack is deaf and cannot use his hands to control a pencil or select letters on a keyboard, it was difficult for his teachers to figure out how to give him access to the alphabet in order to learn to write. At age 14, Jack began using an alphabet flip chart with partner-assisted scanning. Jack's communication partner would point to a letter of the alphabet and then fingerspell it for him. Jack's job was to press a switch with his knee, which would turn on a red light, indicating that his partner should write that letter, or press a switch with his elbow to turn on a green light, indicating that his partner should move to the next letter. If Jack could hear, the lights would not be necessary. His switches could activate messages that told his partner to write that one down or go to the next one. The lights were required for Jack since he would not be able to hear the messages and he needed to know that his message was communicated correctly. Here's what Jack's progress looks like over time. In this writing sample, Jack wrote about going to the movies. He repeatedly chose many letters from the beginning of the alphabet, seemed to take a bit of a break, and then selected the letter X multiple times before finishing. Selecting the same letter many times is typical for emergent writers who are learning to use the alphabet flip chart. Jack's letter choices are in alphabetical order because that's the way they were presented. This is likely the equivalent of scribble because the letter choices seem to be random. It's interesting to note that Jack chose the letters J and K twice. Is it a coincidence that these letters are in his name? At this point, we have no idea, but we can teach Jack that information by saying, "You chose the J and the K. Let me show you how I can use those letters to write your name." You might also take advantage of Jack's choice of the letters M and O and show him how you can use those letters to spell the word movie. At this stage, we cannot really tell what Jack intended to write, and we should not presume that we can figure out what he is trying to write. But we can help him understand how he can use some of the letters he chose to spell words related to the topic. Over a year later, this is what Jack wrote about going to Greensboro with his mom to visit a friend named Steffi. Now Jack is choosing fewer letters and he is not repeating them. Also notice that he has gone through all the letters of the alphabet twice. Again, he has not spelled anything, but he has selected the J and K again. He has also chosen the letters S, F, and I, which appear in Steffi's name, and the letter M, which appears twice in the word mom. Since Jack is deaf and cannot hear words, he is probably getting this information from looking at written words or from Steffi's name sign, which includes the initial letter of her name. Did he intend to spell the words Jack, Steffi, and Mom? We have no idea, and once again, we should not presume to know, but we could certainly show him how those letters appear in words we know are meaningful to him. A month later, Jack wrote about his mom going away for 2 weeks. As is typical for emergent writers, we see him repeating the same letters, but in contrast to the first writing sample you saw, the letter selections seem to be more intentional. He waited until he got to L before making his first selection, and the J and K appear twice. Is the M for mom? Is the I referring to himself? We still don't know, but we are beginning to see changes that suggest Jack is moving toward conventional writing. Finally, the team realized that Jack needed a way to indicate a space in order to mark individual words rather than writing continuous strings of letters. He should have had a means of indicating a space as soon as he began to show basic understandings of the print alphabet flip chart. When it was provided, Jack started using it. This writing sample is about a remote-controlled dinosaur Jack got for Christmas. Guess who gave it to him? Dad. Finally, we see a real word. It relates directly to the topic Jack selected, and we can presume that he intended to write the word Dad. As Jack continues to make progress, he actually writes less, but the message continues to get easier to understand. This writing sample is about a bingo game that Jack won. These final two samples show us that in an 18-month period, Jack went from selecting random and repeated letters to more intentional letter selections. In the previous sample, he correctly spelled the word dad, and in this sample, he comes very close to spelling the word game correctly. It must have been hard to imagine that Jack would make this kind of progress when he started 18 months earlier. Remember, however, that this progress did not happen by accident. Jack's writing improved because he had regular opportunities to write about topics of interest. He was also provided with informative information about his letter choices, and he had language and literacy instruction that included shared reading, alphabet and word study lessons, independent reading, and shared writing on a daily basis. In this module, you learned what emergent writing is, how to help emergent writers choose meaningful topics, and how to support them as they figure out how to use their pencil to express their thoughts in text. This is not a quick process, nor is it linear, resulting in consistent progress every day. Our job as educators is to provide repeated opportunities to engage in writing about meaningful topics, informative feedback, and ongoing language and literacy instruction. Writing skills develop slowly over an extended period of time, but given access to appropriate tools and instruction, writing samples over time provide evidence of progress towards conventional writing. For more information about the Dynamic Learning Maps alternate assessment system, please go to www.dynamiclearningmaps.org. Thank you for your participation.